thanks for coming today. We've got a great 1 hour coming up. You are, in case you're wondering where you are, you're at the Contemporary Book Design panel discussion here at the State Library of Victoria. And in a moment we're going to be seeing some slides and hearing from our special guests. My name is Oslo Davis. I'm an illustrator and cartoonist. And I won't be talking about myself, but I'll be interviewing these people, which is very exciting. Before we get going, let me just say that today's discussion is on the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge them as the traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders and to the elders of other communities who may be here. So, Contemporary Book Design today is part of a program of events and activities associated with the exhibition that you may have seen already, that's over in the Keith Murdoch Gallery here at the library, and it's called Inspiration by Design, Word and Image from the Victoria and Albert Museum. And at the end of this discussion, we'll have library staff who can lead you over to that exhibition and take you through that if you like. I'll talk about that later. It's a free exhibition and it's on until I think mid-June, the 15th. And it is a world first for the State Library, showcasing some of the world's finest book art, graphics, photography and illustration. So yeah, and I also should mention that this event is part of the Melbourne International Design Week 2015. So let's get to our guests. In no particular order, Radovan Jenko is an award-winning graphic designer, illustrator and professor from Slovenia. In 2003, he helped found Slovenia's Bruman Foundation, yes. An institution for promoting visual communications. Sitting to his left is Greasier and Louise Jennison. They collaborate creatively to create whimsical collage, paper art and artists' books. Next to Louise, we have Flavia Cocchi. And working with design greats Werner Jenker and Benetton's Massimo Vignelli early in her career, Flavia went on to design for cultural institutions, artists, architects across Europe, including the Louvre. Just looking forward to hearing about that. And to my immediate right is my old friend Stuart Geddes, designer, academic, used to run a design studio called Chase and Galley, and has an impressive reputation for his unique design and his work in print production. So please welcome our guests. Now I've asked the speakers today to talk a little bit about themselves first, and then after we've heard a little bit, 5 minutes from each, and we'll see some slides, we'll launch into some questions, and then hopefully with 10 or 15 minutes to go before the end, we'll have time for questions from you. So if you have any questions, please hold on to those to the very end. First, we're going to hear from Radovan. Flown all the way, he's been in Melbourne a week or so. Thanks for coming. And is part of the festival generally. But let's hear from you. I'm keen to see some of the work that you've brought along. And can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and what you do these days?
Well, thank you. Well, how I started, you mean, to do in this profession, you know, is some time ago. And I started then in former Yugoslavia or where no colleges there for design or something or illustration. So I need to go outside, abroad to study, you know. And it was the chance where to go. I didn't knew where to go. And then I saw some very good works of Polish designers, actually poster art. So I decided to go there to Warsaw to study regularly, 5-year studies. And after that, I just launched everything what I want to do, but not as specialist in a field, more generalist, which means that I work actually everything. We're not the time to be possible to earn money for just one thing, for example, poster art or something like that. You need to do everything to survive. So this was that.
So you studied poster art. This is in the early 80s or late 70s in Warsaw, and graduated in poster art. That seems like a pretty specific thing to graduate in.
Well, then was this quite normal, you know, because it was a seminar of specialization of poster art. Beside that, I finished also painting. So the base things for them was art forms, you know, was base for design. The design came from the art, not opposite. So this was normally, you know, and why was so popular then? I think that because they have a kind of filter, the artists, they just could express themselves in a way that they couldn't speak, for example, and they express themselves through visually about things, even political. So they have a kind of freedom through this art form.
So what have you brought in today? We've got some slides here from you. What are we looking at here?
Yes, this is a poster made for an exhibition of student works, and this was first made by and after that was a book which you will see just after that. It's from this poster arrived is a base for the book itself after that. Yes, this is actually the 3D, the object. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's mine. No, you could pass it. Well, it's about 56 students' projects inside. In 15 work made on Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Ljubljana. And it's cooperation of work of 2 students and mine. So it's about, you know, it's Japanese bindings. It's about, you know, was enough money to do that. Sometimes it is. These are a little bit too. No comment, actually, you know. Just fun.
So these days, well, it's a long time since the early 80s, but these days, your work seems to occupy a fair bit of teaching at the Academy, and I'm interested to explore that. How did you get into teaching, and what is in it for you, or why do you teach?
Well, this actually already some 20 years ago, I started teaching. You know, a friend of mine, professor, invited me to start. I was not sure, you know, if I could do that. After a few years, I decided to stay when I just want to go out. But, you know, it's like we spoke a little earlier, you know, it's my program is partly teaching, but most part is still designing. I think that you cannot teach if you don't design at the same time. So, and teaching, I think that is also the benefit for us professors the same, because it's a two-way of communication, you know, and you learn from students and she learn from me. So that's two-way of thinking.
What are you learning from your students?
You know, it's a very various thing. You know, it's you could learn about some unique approach to a problem, whatever, you know. Anyway, you need to be open.
It's probably something we'll return to today. I'm interested in this idea of connecting with younger people and learning from students, because I know some of our panellists here are students, teachers and students as well. So that's quite an interesting thing. Lastly, before we move on, I'm interested in this idea, because this is a discussion about book design. Do you see any crossover between, I guess, poster design and the work that you've done there to producing something quite small that we're seeing passed around here up on stage?
Well, it's not so much difference, you know, between poster and book design. I mean, book cover design. But inside, of course, it's another story. It's the whole rhythm, everything what is, you know, is much more complex if we speak about inside story of book. If we speak about outside, I mean cover, then it's a little bit alike. And it's, of course, some other obligation that you need to put on the cover, which is not the same with the poster, but more or less is quite similar.
They're probably doing a similar thing in, I guess, trying to attract a viewer.
As I said, I was studied just poster design, and after that I could do everything, because why I could, because they doesn't taught us how to do things. They taught us how to think visually. This is the main difference.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to move on. We talked to Greasier and Louise.com, when you can see a lot of your work. Now, you guys work collaboratively. You produce artist books and zines and all sorts of ephemera. Walk us through your life and careers, please.
We'll start formally with a little reading, if that will sort of introduce who we are. For those of you who we are yet to meet, we are besotted with paper for its foldable, adaptable, cuttable, concealable and revealing nature. In our artist books, prints, zines, drawings and collages, we use play, humour and perhaps the poetic as well to reel you in closer. For us, above all, it is not the medium that is always of greatest import, but the message. And so we use found photographs, collected postcards and acquired scenery in our artist books and zines, alongside our drawings and prints, for what they can enable us to say and what we hope you might in turn feel. Though of course what you feel is entirely up to you, and to this end we favour open endings above all. You can see in our work what you will. You can make of our collaged and drawn scenarios what you will. You can see fragments of your very own self. You can see your own link with nature. You can see human nature reflected in movements and actions of the muzzled anteater roaming through a paved courtyard, or salvaged relatives costumed for the ballet. You can see charm absolute. Along the way, some people have seen our zines to be artist books and others to be that. But as this is something beyond our control, we're fine with that. Like anything, the closer you look, the more you see. As our collaborative collage for the artist book edition of the La Trobe Journal shows, the animal is oft present and easily detectable, the centre of our paper stage. Hard to miss, over here and over there, the animal runs up hills, scales rooftops, and sometimes appears in the library considering flight. Gliding through a scene it is too large to be contained within, or perhaps too man-made to call home. That it has a tail or feathers or furred muzzle is not solely why its form appears. For us, the animal is there to question our very own behaviour, those moral principles one governs the self by, and to explore our relationship with the natural world. Based in Melbourne, we work from home, and more often than not, we collaborate with each other. We rather fell into collaboration many years ago now, and it is one based on harmony. To date, we have made 83 artist book titles and 93 zine titles. For a spell, these two figures were in beautiful and accidental accord, but with the recent National Gallery Victoria's Art Book Fair, we created 11 new zines and 2 artist books, one of which features the shrunken salvage relatives on a deck of carte de visite. We decided early on in our collaboration, through an organic process, not to polish the same skills. We naturally leant towards different things and now bring those different things together to make one work not possible without the other. Working this way, a third work is made that belongs to us both. Similar things influence us, but to the collaboration, I bring my love of natural history, science, and wannabe bookbinder's precision. Greisier enjoys inverting these facts about extinction and the plight of endangered animals to give them a different meaning. Armed with a pair of honeybee scissors, she tosses in the red herrings, but not always. Our work as part of In Your Dreams, for example, was inspired by the choreography of Murphy, Killian, and Balanchine, and it was about loss of our Siamese cat of 16 years, Omar, loss of species, loss of possibilities. It was about the body inevitably growing older and the knees that now creak. It was about all the things that are now only possible in dream. It was inspired by the stories of Catherine Mansfield, which pull the rug out from underneath you, and the writings of Patrick Hamilton and John Williams for their sadness and beautifully ordinary characters on the page. It was inspired by Dickens' description of a character building castles in the sky as much as it was about the now muted colours of the costumes of the ballet ruses. It was inspired by all the things we love. The two of us have been fans of the book for a long time now, and it is perhaps because no work is ever as you imagined or saw in your mind's eye that we keep working with books, paper, drawing and collages. Every step, every part of the process, every learning curve holds us entranced. We love the challenges artist books present, the possibilities, the history they hold and the intimacy they awaken. The flexible medium of the book holds us in its palm rather than us holding the book in our own palms. In the beginning, the medium of the artist book seemed to us to be free of rules and regulations. It also presented many new things to consider, from page layout and sequence to typographical decisions, and such things we tossed in the air and arranged upon their landing. Working together has meant we were able to figure out the particulars through trial and error and groundwork. From the outset, we knew next to nothing to the logistics of binding, but a love of reading books and a limited knowledge of the history of artist books, coupled with a brief stint in Switzerland to study experimental binding techniques on a Friedman Foundation travelling scholarship, has guided us along the way, and blind faith, or whatever you wish to call it. At the back of our minds, the feeling that if we stuff this up, it has all been in vain, and this is a powerful motivator when joined with a love for what you are doing. In a true show of how our collaboration works, never sharpening our arrows equally, I am reading from notes penned by Greisier.
And this is really us in a nutshell, preparation.
Perfect, thank you. Can you walk us through some of these images that you've brought along? So this was the cover of the La Trobe journal that came out recently, is that right?
Yeah, so this is one of our digital collages that we made together, and they're in the John Soane's breakfast room, which also doubled as a library. And then this is from the Coonahan Gallery, In Your Dreams. And so this is a collaboration both sometimes on the same image together, and other times, like the drawings are all Louise's orcs, and then I've done the cabinet cards as well. So,
and we obviously figure out the whole composition and installation together outside of the gallery in a larger space, and then bring it all together. And so it's the tumble-down concertinas of some of Greisier's unique state artist books. And then there's some framed postcard collages in there, and then floating drawings and framed drawings.
This is another one of my collages under the water, and this is one that required some, not 3D glasses, but before 3D technology. I can't recall what that is. It's not in the notes. I can't remember.
The little red-blue paper glasses. So this is a unique state artist book, one of Greisier's collaged artist books, which is on a very early 3D printed book, collaged directly. It's about so big. And then we also made a zine edition of that, so that's an edition of 100 as a zine. The only difference, we call our zines something that's digitally printed, and it tends to be editions of around 50 to 100, whereas our artist books are unique state or up to maybe an edition of 10, and very laboured over, very like a long expanse of working on them.
And this is one of your drawings, Louise?
This is from a very large book that I made, which was so big. And it was a one-off. It was a drawing, it was 12 months of the year, Southern Hemisphere birds, and it was all drawn in 2B pencil. And each month of the year had a page with a banner about the habitat of each bird and then a bird from that month. And this is the giant kakapo. They're all drawn to scale and surrounded by things in their habitat. And then on the text page, Greasier wrote this beautiful narrative about me travelling to these places, drawing these birds, which totally didn't happen. I was in the studio working from photos. But the scientific facts are absolutely correct in the book, and that interest in natural history is sort of very much part of our work. But and then also that book, then we made a edition of 10 concertinas that were just the bird component in lithographic offset and then hand-coloured in pencil.
And these are the salvaged relatives, the first 3 editions. They're in cylinder boxes that Louise has made. And these are all people I don't know, and I've costumed them in outfits from the Ballet Russe. So you've got different ones. Some are from the opera as well, but there's the costume for a seahorse you can see lying horizontal.
And each of the collages have a title, and titlings have always been really important because Greasier can write fantastically and I can barely string a sentence together. But the titles are really beautiful in these pieces particularly, and they incorporate all the different Ballet Russe costumes and reference back to those.
Radovan, I just want to jump in here, but looking at some of your work online, you use collage a lot too, and I see a lot of exotic birds. Have you seen his work in that style? It's do you see the similarity, Radovan?
Well, you know, I copy too.
I'm not saying copy, I'm just saying
everybody's copying,
similarity.
No, I like very much collages. The same, you know, it's beautiful things to have already something, to change in something that you still don't know what will happen at the end. Well, this could be something the process is also very important, not only the final piece at the end, result. So I like collages, and I like yours collages very much.
Thank you very much for that. We'll move on to our next speaker. Welcome, Flavia Cocchi. Can I throw over to you because I know you have something prepared? Would you like to? Do you want to use? Can you pick up the microphone, please? Yes.
I
talk about the images.
I talk
perhaps?
about my office because I come from Switzerland. Fortunately, I'm born in Switzerland because in Switzerland, the graphic design and the typography is really an important thing for everybody. And like this, I think it's more easier to work in this country than in a lot of other countries. And after my school, in art school, to learn graphic design, at school I made a lot of illustration, but it was not my, how do you say, I was not very good in illustration. And they don't give me the possibility to make typography. But after I was by Werner Jacker. It's a very good graphic designer, typography, and poster designer, international, and by him I learned typography. And after, for me, it's really, how can I say, it's really a vocation to work only with typefaces. I love that. And by him, I have beginning to make books with him. And after I'm crossed around Europe, I was in France, I was in Italy at Benetton, I was in New York too, and to work. And I was thinking that for my own business, my office, it will be better to be in Switzerland, always because I know that I could make book easier than somewhere else. And I begin to do that, but me, I have clients. I never made book only for me. Perhaps later, I hope. But all the time I have clients, and it's a big adventure, because for them it's like a baby, a book. Really, it's 9 months or more, sometimes 2 years, more than a baby, and we have to speak about a lot of things together with the client, with things very. For me, the book, it's really more intime. You understand intime? Intime. Than poster or than
intimate. Sorry.
Intimate. So, and because it's really something from inside. I work a lot for artists. I make a lot of books for artists, for architects. And it's really, after the, comment je peux dire? I speak French normally. It's difficult for me. We are very proche. How do you say proche? Closed with the guy or the woman. And it's really a strange, beautiful relation. And for me now, before I made a lot of posters too, but now I prefer the book because the time is more long to do a book. The researches are more long, and I like to, when I can think about something, when I have time to think about this book. I think that now with the computer and so we have to do all the things so rapidly, and for me it's too much. I didn't have time to make really to feel the thing. And with the book, I hope that I can have more and more clients for this, and to stop perhaps all the other work. But the difference, it's we have to win our life, and with the book it's more difficult than with some other works in design.
So can we look at some of your work that you've brought in? Can you please?
Yes.
Would you like to describe it, or are you happy for us just to look at it? Because
no,
I know
I can describe a little bit. This is one of my big work. It's a museum from design in Lausanne, in Switzerland, and this is the first catalog I made for them. It was a catalog for artists. They made work only with pneumatic. What's the name of the? Yes. And I made a cover. For this book, I had more money because the cover was very expensive to make. I made this in London, the cover, and the book in Switzerland. And you can go on the beach with this book everywhere. It's a good, it's a good proposition. This is a book for an architect, a minimalist architect, very black and white. And when I saw him, the first day, I have thinking about this cover, black, all the cover black. And often the first impression, I have the cover. After, it's another problem to have inside. It's a lot of work. But when I saw the guy or the woman, I said, okay, the cover can be this. And after, I made a lot of projects, 100, 200, but I come back to the first one. This is a catalog for artists too, but they work only with natural material. And I make this in a material, how I say in French, du feutre? Fête, okay. It's like the, la terre, comment on dit la terre? Earth, like earth. And this is the cover of the book. And this form, you see, this is what you put when you make a garden. You put the small thing in the earth. It's this. This is my lovely book. No, lovely lover. I don't know. One of my best book for me. It's about the paper from the oranges, very thin. And here is a lot of pages because I make the book also with the very thin paper. And I print only one faces. And when you turn the pages, you have the what do you say? Ouais, transparent. Transparence from like the really paper. And I make this bind only with the orange, les fils. Yes, you understand. Okay. Yes, this is very nice. I love books when we can touch them and we feel something. This is for me the most important. Not with paper, standard paper, but really when you can, without eyes, you can touch the book and feel something already important.
Is this a detail from that book, or this
is this book? It's my book about my work. And the first pages, I love the point. And the first pages are like this, with all these small trous.
Laser cut. Laser cut.
Yes. And it's just a pleasure to do this for my book. And I love this kind of bind.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on. Magnificent. Yes, please clap. So our last speaker, and we're going to race through this possibly. So Stuart Geddes, let's get into it. What have you brought? Well, you've worked a lot in publishing, done a lot of covers, but also a lot of whole books. And I think one of your latest magnificent achievements is the ARM architecture monograph that's just come out. But tell us about what we're looking at here.
Yeah. Okay, so I put this in just more as an indicative picture of my practice. It is much more whole books. I don't think I've ever actually done a book cover, but you know. So and I guess I kind of conflated published material things with printed pages, and most of the time a spine with books for the purposes of this afternoon. But within that stack, there's architecture monographs and literary journals and books on surfing and magazines and Paul's book and the motorcycle magazine that I make.
So 10 years ago, it all began with Is Not magazine, which was a rock poster magazine stuck up around Melbourne. It seems like a very long time ago now.
It does. This is where we met Paul, or where I met Paul, Oslo. I guess the thing that sort of ties my interest in publishing and books and magazines together is the kind of relationship between the published object and its community or its audience. Is Not magazine, excuse me, was most interesting, I think, not even so much for its form, which was this 2 meters by 1.5 meters, excuse me, poster with like many thousands of words on it, but the way we ended up funding it was by having parties. And so that kind of generated this amazing community of people who normally sat at home and wrote or drew cartoons, and people who went out and had parties, and that became a quite interesting community. The next project is a motorcycle magazine that I make with a friend, and this kind of has a different relationship to community, where the friend and I who make it, we essentially use it as a tool to investigate this thing that we're interested in, and so we can use it to call someone up or email them, or just kind of someone you bump into and you go, "Hey, I love your motorcycle. Can we talk about that for a little bit?" And we'll do a story on it in the magazine. And so, on the top right there, that was a story of someone who I really admired. They were both an architect and a motorcycle builder, who lived way up in sort of 10 hours up and turn right at Canberra and go east for about 4 hours. Then you end up at his farm, and I just drove up there and we had this kind of wonderful evening, drinking whiskey and talking about motorcycles and architecture. This is similar to the first slide, but I think my bringing it kind of back to books, where I've kind of come to, I think, in terms of pinpointing a key kind of interest in mine in terms of book design, is that I think I'm kind of really interested in kind of archetypes of books. And so, like the novel as opposed to a particular novel, a photo book, a dictionary, a diary, those kinds of things. And then the way that kind of works out in my practice in terms of making something new out of something old is kind of mashing these two, mashing any number of archetypes or typologies of book together. So that book in the top left kind of mashed together a kind of monograph and a novel in this oversized sense. And the one next to it juxtaposed different types of typographic grids and type styles to organise a kind of rhythm to the content and how you would find your way through a book, which was about Guadalajara, which was about systems that work and systems that don't work. So it was like overlapping systems to make it kind of work and not work at the same time. And then the last one is this book that Paul just mentioned, which was a 4-year book and was black on the outside, very much like the book you showed. But then I've been showing it like this because as you sort of, like the edges, all the edges of the text are black as well. And as you kind of crack it open, all of this riot of colour kind of falls out and spills out at you. And I kind of like showing it like this rather than from the cover, because it gives you a sense of the scale of things. It's like 1,600 pages, and we printed it at a Bible printer, and so it's on very thin 50 GSM paper. And I think I love how it can't be experienced in any other way other than its physical self.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone with their slides. I'm really interested in this idea of, well, because we're talking about book design involves a collaboration with usually someone who's commissioning the work, or an artist, or it might be for something. Perhaps in Greasier and Louise's work, you're possibly working a little bit independently of anyone else. But Radovan, the idea of collaboration and working for a client, working for a publisher in producing a book must be very difficult, because designers, as far as I know, can be quite selfish and headstrong sometimes, but it must be hard to work within the confines of the publishing industry. Do you find that stress? Or?
Well, for them, yes, maybe they are stressed a little bit, actually, because I always, of course, we solve the problems, things, but in the same time, I always try to be a little bit more selfish and satisfy myself too with the project, you know. So they are stressed sometimes. But you know, usually it's come along quite good. You know, you always have a person on the other side that you speak with about more or less everything, and he or she expect a little bit when they commission to me some things, and they expect unexpected. So it's I like to make some surprises too, you know. So it's not so stressed, I think. It's stressed if you don't work.
Do you fight hard for your ideas when it comes to these sorts of book projects, or how do you approach these? You know.
Well, I think that the solution is always inside of content. So it's just going out from there. It's not so, you know. It's not where you find the solution, because you have it in a brief or in content. It's no problem about that. And usually, if you are truthful about that, the commissioner will understand very quickly what you are doing with the visuality. So,
Flavia, you are often asked to do books for architects or artists, and you mentioned that a little bit. Do you feel as though they trust you and you have freedom, or do you see that work as collaboration and compromise?
Yes, it's collaboration, but they come in my office because they know what I do, and they won't be surprised. And like this, I'm very free. They want that I'm free. And after, yes, I speak with them. I make a few direction, and I say to them which is for me is the better, and we speak about that. But normally I can do what I want, but the client is is the most important for me. I'm not an artist. I work for him. I don't work for me. I feel him, and after I begin to work, I work for him, and this is the difference.
Even though your name as designer will be on the book when it comes out,
Yes.
You've made compromises for that.
What is compromise?
Compromise.
Les compromis. I hate compromise. Oh.
Gracia, what about your work? I mean, I see your work as existing in a, I'm not going to say bubble, but I have said it. It exists for your own pleasure, it seems. But tell us about any interaction you've had with external parties where you've had to collaborate or maybe even compromise, or...
No, we do work, commissions, things like Collages for the World of Interiors, and that's where you do have to follow a brief, which I think just essentially we just try and keep to something that is true to ourselves and not making which is also why they've, like you mentioned, come to you in the first place, is that they want something that speaks about who you are, as well as also conveying either what the topic is of the book or what words you're trying to describe. So in that way we do, but we also, as you might have guessed from 3 pages of an introduction, I'll make 17 collages instead of 1, and those I know will end up in a zine, and I don't really compromise, but necessarily, I don't really sort of see it that way, but I will make sure that like one was to illustrate a claymaker's process, so I had to include a ziggurat of balls in the collage, which I personally don't like in there, but it does have to be in there to explain that this is their studio. So you have to remember, I guess, why you're making it, who it's for ultimately. But normally when we work, we make it for our own enjoyment. And then it's a conversation between the person looking at the image, so like the reader. But it's quite different. Our books and our commercial practice, the outcome looks similar, but the process of making them is quite different. And it's probably more of a struggle working on the commercial work, even though it is very enjoyable. There is probably a restraint of trying to fit a brief. But in saying that, that's also something that we like. Restraints, restrictions, working without finances, things like that. So it actually makes maybe sometimes a better image or a better outcome.
Thanks. Stuart, just the last question on this one. Your work, as it says on your website, involves a lot of collaboration, and almost everything you've done involves some sort of interaction with the client, especially this last book. I imagine there were 50 stakeholders and all sorts of people involved in this ARM architectural monograph. Tell us a little bit about that. Could you, lay out your vision for what you wanted it to be, and were lucky enough to have it signed off after a couple of weeks, or not? Tell us about that process, because it must have been pretty difficult over 4 years.
It really was, and I guess that I feel like I'm rubbish at working on my own. I kind of never come to a project with a vision of it, even like dig into the work and come back with like this kind of clear vision. I think that collaborative process is really generative, and I always end up with not, it's a cliche, but like it's never my work and it's never their work, it's always our work, and it's always better than it would have been if they'd just given me a bunch of stuff and I'd come back, with it finished. And in that sense, my sense of collaboration has kind of really changed over the years. From I think when I started working, I was much more interested in collaboration with the people that I started a studio with, and in a secondary sense with our clients. But now I've sort of whittled that down to kind of essentially working by myself with authors and editors and publishers and so on. And that's that sense of collaboration has become, and that's kind of really embodied in the work. And I have this idea of it where essentially the finished product is only in the end a diagram of the conversation that kind of formed it.
Great, thank you. Radovan, I'm interested in this idea of, you often get briefs for posters or jobs for posters like arts festivals, and even for publishing work, the designer is given something like the novel if you were to illustrate or design the cover for a famous book or whatever. Do you feel as though you have too much responsibility in dictating the feeling or the mood from your interpretation? I often see book cover designers, for example, I'm not, given a lot of power to describe what the book is about or to get their feeling across through the design. How do you balance your passion and ideas versus perhaps creating something for the people to interpret as well?
Well, I think that first you need to be honest with the author of the book or whatever you are doing. This means that, like Flavia nicely put before, that she tried to be artist itself, how he feel about him. So this is basics that exist, and then it's open road. I think it's after that, it's everything is through that. From this on, you go on to think about how we'll look at the end, and of course after some results, you need to put yourself in position of neutral, to ask yourself, is it that right or not? And with these answers, then honest answers, you go once again, trying once again if it's not good. So I think that it's about thinking how to do to don't make a wrong decision. It's a lot of questioning. It's all the time decisions about to the way to the end result, you know. So it's not so 1 hour job.
Anyone down that end of the panel would like to quickly talk about the last 20 years of contemporary book design? Radovan, let's finish with you. What have you seen change? What are some of the big changes for you in book design in the last 20 years or so?
Well, I mean, I think the speed with which we could make a book, in a way, however, you have much more time. But, you know, it's now, a long time ago, before computers, of course, we just do one job, you know, we do design. And maybe you do illustration. But now we have much more jobs in one. So we are typographer, we are illustrator, we are ecologist, we scan things, so on. And everything this is needed for a book. So, and we are paid much less than before, of course. However, we have 5 jobs in one. So I think that, but you know, in the same time, now you really have a possibility to see really different approaches in book design. Which are dealing again with the possibility that you could be on internet and see a lot of things. You could be just in one room and see a lot of things. And this is a big influence, I think, that the cyberspace is here.
Well, I've certainly been very excited to get a sneak peek into your working lives and the work that you do. It's all magnificent and it's fantastic. As you say, Radovan, we have to do all things now, but we get paid for one job. But you are all very flexible and working across a lot of areas, from design to actual bookmaking to collage to typography. So thank you very much. Everyone, please thank Radovan, Greasier, Louise, Flavia and Stuart.